Give
Hello.
everybody just a second to join. And Doug, I think you should intro first because you always do.
That sounds great.
Excellent.
Hello, everyone. Just taking a second to let everybody in. We look pretty good.
Yep.
Started for the people who are punctual. Always want to encourage that. My name is Doug, everyone. I know quite a few of you, but for those that don't know, I'm the customer success manager here at Mies. So I help onboard and train and, everything you need to know about Mies kind of person. With me, as always, Sarah Hassler. Sarah, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name's Sarah. I am the Director of Customer Success and Support here at Mies. And we are also introducing today, new to the webinar series, Mitchell Berger, who is our Customer Success Engineer. Hi, Mitchell. I just took
Hello,
your
everyone.
intro from you. Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay. So we're here today to talk about the real secret to getting a handle on your food costs, or why your theoretical costs are off of what your actual are. So before we get into like the variance and how to affect that variance, let's just talk about what theoretical food cost is, right? Theoretical is exactly that. It is the perfect world where no one drops anything, nothing ever spoils, nothing molds. Everything is measured perfectly and every plate is portioned perfectly. I don't know what kind of world you live in, but that was never the world that I could achieve when I was running kitchens. So what really mattered was the actual food cost, which by definition is just what the total spend of your food, right? What you're actually paying. But the way that we see actual food cost is more than that that number on a cog sheet. It's more than just another number. There's so much that goes into it that isn't calculated. So actual food costs may include employee inefficiencies, waste, spoilage, improper portioning. They dropped it. Sorry, chef, I forgot to add the butter and now this is ruined. Those things, all those external factors that you can't control for, except maybe you can. So what we're really talking about when we're talking about theoretical food costs being off is profit margin, right? And how you can solve for waste, improper training, spoilage due to over prepping, etc. The obvious answer here is that recipes can solve for some of this, but that starts to get fraught as we go. How do you know what recipe your cooks are using? If everybody's got a notebook, or even if there's one main notebook, let's say you need a 4 times batch of this recipe, and the cook who's doing it isn't great with math or isn't great with the conversions. How are you going to get the most accurate recipe completed with the most consistent food across the board? And this is where Mies comes in. So we think about this 2 ways. One, the importance of using Mies in your kitchen. So many of our customers come and they are looking to Mies as a back office tool, but what this was built for is to be used in the kitchen, is to be the recipe repository where you can go and scale and change and build prep lists and do what you need to do to get to get that variance between your theoretical cost and your actual cost to be as low of a percentage as possible. This is only possible if you put as much of your chef's brain as you can into Mies. At least this is how I like to say it. Everyone always looks at me weird when I say this, but it's really about getting one source of truth. All those things that your cooks might tug on you for, if they could go to the tablet and get the answers there, it's one less thing that you have to answer in that moment, which I would have given anything when I was in the kitchens to have a few more of those moments back.
And if
guys,
if I can jump in real quick. I mean, when I was starting out as a prep cook and a line cook, the culture that I was in was take your notebook and write down as much as you could so that you have your own copy in your back pocket and you didn't have to rely on, the binder that was being used by everybody else because there's only one binder. And what that produced was 10 or 12 different people, all with notebooks, all with kind of the same recipe, but also not really the same recipe because you skipped a step, you didn't hear it right, you didn't want to re-ask the chef And so you have sort of an incomplete thing, and then you sort of continue making it your way, and then somebody else did the same thing with their notebook. And like, what the idea was great, right? We wanted to have our own autonomy over what we did and our recipes. But what it actually did was created 10 different prep cooks and line cooks who all did sort of a different thing. And it was kind of hard to really, rein everybody in. So like the spirit was there, the what we wanted to do was there. We wanted autonomy. We didn't want to have to ask the chef every time. We didn't want to have to grab the binder from somebody who's already using it. But at the end of the day, it wasn't a good way of going about it. So using this tool in the kitchen is so much easier because you have one recipe that everyone's focusing on. Everyone's able to access it from their phone, from their tablet. And that's, to me, it solves both problems. It gives autonomy to the cooks, but there's only one recipe everyone's looking at.
Right. I tried solving for some of that when I was an exec chef. I used Evernote instead of everybody having a binder, or instead of having one binder. So I had different recipes built in Evernote. But the issue was, there were two main issues. One, everybody could access it. So that meant everybody could edit it. So I had some cooks that were going in that they weren't super tech savvy. And so suddenly they were adding additional characters like this should say 2 teaspoons of butter, and now it says 2 AAAs of butter. What does that mean? No idea, but Kelly made the last edit on that recipe. Oops. And then there was the other piece of it, is that it still didn't solve for the math, right? Like on a Monday, my par is very different than it is on a Saturday. And I need them to scale this recipe from 1/4 of the normal par on Monday to 5 times the normal par on Saturday. And asking them to do that kind of math was just asking for inaccuracy, in my experience. So that brings us to, again, using Mies in your kitchen. If I had Mies, oh my, this could be the one source of truth for your recipes, because this solves for the 2 main issues that I had. One, in that I can set edit access so that only me and maybe my sous chef can be the ones that go in and can change the recipe. But the rest of my team can have view access, and by viewing, they can also scale. And so all of their math issues get solved right there. 2, I'm also like providing my cooks with a tool that's going to get them to the end game. It's going to get them to a much better day, hopefully happier, with less tugging on my brain. It's a big piece. Mitchell, I don't know if you have anything to say about using Mies from a prep cook's perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would completely agree with everything you're saying. I feel like having this in the kitchen when I was a prep cook would have helped me not have to ask the chef 10, 12, 15 times for the same thing, or it would eliminate so many issues and problems that I would have had with all the recipes.
Right.
100%.
One other thing that I would have liked to have had the ability to change recipes kind of on the fly. If I noticed, for example, that like your a cook isn't cutting an onion the right way, and all I have to do is tell them to change their knife and go this way instead of that way, then I could write that into the recipe, or maybe put a towel underneath your mixing bowl so that it doesn't slide off the table. I can write that into the recipe and create a better technique, and only have to say it once. Anything to get me to stop repeating myself. That's really the goal here. So updating with the techniques that you need, and then automatic scaling that's preventing those math errors. So the next piece of this, we're going to step into how to build prep lists into Mies. So this does require edit access, and I'm going to share here. Sorry, so many screens. There we go. Okay. So the first way would be to build a super recipe. So you can see here, we built a Mitchell prep list for the week of 4/24. And a super recipe just means that there are a number of other recipes inside of this. This week, Mitchell only has to prep 2 things. Congratulations. It's a light week for you. So we need 2 quarts of hummus and 2 quarts of spicy mayo. And that's already been set. So if I were the chef and I wanted to say, okay, this is for the week, I need 4 quarts all day, I can change that. Here, I could also write this in cups, ounces, whatever I wanted to. When Mitchell goes in to do his prep, here he can say, well, actually, we only have, if I wanted to open this recipe, so building here. So maybe we only have 2 cups of chickpeas on hand on the Monday that he starts prepping. And then he can let me know right away, chef, we only have enough for a half batch of this. So I only have enough for 2 quarts, which is actually fine because that's what I called for. But anyway, so the scaling can happen here, right? If I wanted to prep 15 quarts because we have a party this week, we can build that from here. And that way I'm not relying on Mitchell to do any of this arithmetic, right? It's already done, set.
And just
So
to
back to his prep list, go ahead.
just to relate it back, I mean, the idea here again is that yes, your costs are important for all these ingredients, but the focus here is on using the, you know, your people, your cooks to execute this stuff so that it does align with the costs, because otherwise the costs are pointless. They're just, you know, there's numbers. If you don't have a team to execute it properly, what's the point of, you know, having an analysis of your theoretical food cost?
Yeah, it's definitely the difference between the theory, which is just that number floating out there, and the actual practice of what actually happens. That's what we're here to talk about today. These are some ways that maybe you could bridge that in your kitchen. So one way to assign a prep list would be to utilize a super recipe like we just showed. Another way could be to build a recipe book. Let's say we add all the recipes for the prep that week to this recipe book called Prep List for this week. And here we can see, okay, we're making these 3 things this week. One extra little bonus, if I were to use this method, the recipe book method, I would like to use this as communication with my cooks in another way in the comments section. So you have the ability, whether you're an editor or a viewer, to add comments to any recipe. So here in the recipe book, I can't necessarily say I only want 1 times batch this week of the hummus, but I could put that in a comment down here and say, Mitchell, I just want a 1 times batch. And that was today, this afternoon. And then when Mitchell finishes this recipe, he can say, chef, I put this in the walk-in on the top shelf to the left. So that the next time that somebody else is like, chef, I can't find the hummus. Okay, do you have to ask me? First of all, we all know what happens when they ask you where things are in the walk-in. You know immediately, and it's probably right in front of them. But they could have a source to go to here. If it was in your workflow to add comments to the recipes as you prepped them, as your cooks finish them, they could leave these comments here. And then you have a dated, time-stamped record of where things are and who did what. Just kind of a bonus. So that's one way that maybe you could work with Mies in your kitchens. So again, Michael, 2 times batch for this week. He could respond after that. That's another way of adding a prep list. All right, and then a third way would be to add dated tags. So you can see, so we use the word tags and tools interchangeably. So here, let's go to this salsa verde recipe as an example. So if I wanted to add a tag to this recipe, I would click edit and scroll down here. So this section is called tools. You're certainly welcome to use it for tools. Personally, what I would do is, or something you could do, is to add tags that have to do with the date. So if I want to tag every recipe that I want prepped that week, let's say, with, I want to be able to see them all at once, I'm going to tag them with week of 4/24. Now, if I'm in the view mode and I'm one of the cooks, I can go in and filter, go down to tools, also known as tags, and select week of 4/24. And now I'm only going to see those couple of recipes that I've assigned for that week. So another way of just kind of filtering down after you build recipes in here, over time, it starts to become cumbersome into how to organize this. So this is one of those ways of getting to where you need to be. If I were using this method, I would also use the comments section to track who did what the assignment is, etc. And then one more way, if you're more of a back office user and you prefer that kind of method, then you can always make a doc. So in the docs section, there is a prep list that I built here, and it was really simple. I just created a table by clicking on here, and I made it 3 by 3, recipe, how much, cook assigned, done. So now when the cooks go in, they can click on these things. If they're on a tablet, on an iPad or something, they could click on salsa verde. That will open. They can see my note that I want a 2 times batch. It's assigned to Michael that week. Set, ready to go. Again, you could use the comment section if you wanted. You can use any or all of these or none and stick with your whiteboard. And still, just by using these in your kitchen and granting your cooks view access, you're going to get closer to your theoretical food cost, just in practice. Questions? I know we have some preloaded from earlier, but anybody here, because you guys are priority.
And also any comments about how successful anyone's been with using this with their cooks, whether they've, you've heard from them, how have it's made their lives easier, and just any experiences like that, we'd love to hear about too. I'm sure others would love to hear too.
Absolutely. Okay. In the meantime, there were a couple of, Steve, were you hoping to talk? No? Okay. So there were a couple of questions that were asked ahead of time. One, can you print recipes? Yes. There's a recording of this webinar, by the way, we will send out. Yes, you can print recipes. I can showcase that. So printing recipes happens in the actions. So if I'm in my salsa verde recipe, I can go here and click print, and that will bring up my printer, and I can print from there. So by doing that, you can definitely put them into a binder and get them into your kitchen, but it does leave room for if they are scaling or changing recipes at all, then you might miss a version. So by using these in your kitchen on a tablet, you're getting the most up-to-date, live, accurate, and of course, scaled out recipe. My printer is bugging out, so I'm going to not share. There we go. How
Hey,
to
Sarah.
account for, oh, go ahead.
Hey, I was trying to download an ingredient list, a CVS or CSV list of ingredients, and I'd scaled a few recipes for a big event, and I don't think those scaled amounts made it into the CSV file. Does that make sense, or will it
Did
transfer?
you pull an
just the
order list?
I don't know what I mean, if you want to go back to your screen, like I tried to export, so you click on export the ingredient list. So I went and clicked on the item. So I had a recipe book created.
Okay.
And I clicked on the items that I needed to export.
Okay, so it will not scale from inside a recipe book, right?
Okay.
So unless you have them, the yield set as what you're actually pulling.
Got
But
it. Okay.
so the best case scenario, like the easiest way around that, Dan, is to create a super recipe, right?
Okay.
So to put all of the sub recipes for your event here, set the
Mhm.
quantities to the ones that you need, and then from here, click on the little kebab,
Yeah.
and then export, and then order
Right.
list.
Order list. Yeah.
And
Okay.
that will aggregate, even if you have cilantro in 6 different recipes, it's going to aggregate all of that into one quantity for ordering.
Right. Yeah, that was a good idea. I just haven't thought about doing like a master prep list like that.
Right.
I created a recipe book for like a wedding we were catering or whatever, and was trying to scale it and then pull out the numbers of, but it was only bringing the numbers of the original recipe. So I was,
Yep.
Okay, that
No,
makes
it's a
sense.
great question. Yeah.
Thanks.
So super recipe to the rescue for you.
Got it.
Other questions? Okay. Does printing function print photos in the recipe? It will print the hero photo, so the top photo, as far as I believe that's the only one that prints at this point. Doug, am I correct? Yes.
Yeah, that's correct. The because the prep steps can be either a video or an image, we don't have a way of actually printing those automatically, just because obviously we can't print a video. So it's something that we've heard some feedback on. Would love to figure out. But right now it's just the the hero image and any notes. So if you put a note in your recipe, you can add images to that note as well. And those will print.
Any way to get cost to print, or is that like if I was
So
trying to
costs
send a
you
recipe?
can pull from recipe cost export, but as far as printing costs on the costing page, it will not print that.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, same idea though, Dan. A lot of folks will just screenshot the cost and put it into a note when they want to be able to print it with the cost next to it, and then they can just remove the cost if they need, whenever they're
Got
ready.
it. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, originally we were like, cooks shouldn't see the cost, and then
No,
suddenly
I hear. Yeah, yeah.
we're like, oh, we do want them to see it.
Right.
it
No, it's
depends.
just sometimes when if I'm working on a master menu for someone in the, the owner or the exec chef wants to see all the costing, it's like it's hard to get it all in one place.
Yes, I get that. So we had a couple other questions, mostly around costing, around getting your food costs, getting your theoretical costs. So we did 2 other webinars solely based on how to get food costs, top 5 reasons your recipes aren't pulling costs, and like a deeper dive into that. Doug, I think, linked them in the chat. So they're just a half hour each episode. You can listen to them or watch them and replay them, but they do answer how to use the food cost calculator. If you're seeing errors in your costs, you can dig in there.
Yeah. We pretty much encounter those 5 things are pretty much 98% of the questions we get around costing. So that should very much answer a lot of questions folks have, but obviously you can always reach out if it doesn't.
Yes, if we didn't answer your question, 1, we'll be really excited about that because it's new. But 2, you can always reach out to support@getmees.com or click the little question mark in the app, and that'll take you right to our help desk. Those are live humans there, not robots, and Mees wizards. So highly recommend going to support@getmees. Couple of things we wanted to mention. So we are giving away an iPad live on this call today because we really want you to use Mees in kitchens. So if that means that we're giving you the iPad to do that, awesome. We're excited about that. Before we get to that part, and I'm going to introduce Liz here to draw the name. Before we get to that part, we also recognize that like everybody on this call is probably either an exec chef, an owner, a consultant, something of that level. And the people that we're telling you to use this in your kitchens with your cooks, right? So how are you going to train your cooks on how to use Mees? We would like to invite your cooks to the next 2 webinars where we are going to do a boot camp, a Mees prep cook boot camp. They do not have to be prep cooks. They can be line cooks. They can be exec chefs. But if you want them to use Mees in the kitchen, the next 2 webinars that we're going to do on May 8th and May 22nd, we'll announce these dates and send you a copy. May 8th and May 22nd, both are Mondays. Both will be at 2:30 Eastern, just like this one. We are going to do everything we can to train your cooks on how to use Mees to be more organized in the kitchen. I will also say that they don't necessarily have to use Mees to get benefit from this. If you just want your cooks to be more organized and be better through their day, this is a great opportunity for them. I encourage you to bring your cooks to me. Thanks. Liz, are you ready to draw the name?
I already have.
So it's going to be a part 1 and a part 2. It's helpful if they come to both, but if you can only get them to one of them, please come to part 1. Both are going to be talking about how to organize your day in order to be more effective and more efficient in the kitchen. And the part 2 kind of does a deeper dive. May 8th and May 22nd. My pleasure. Okay, Liz.
All
do your
right.
thing.
The winner of the iPad today is Allison.
Ooh. Well done,
Hooray!
Alice.
Congrats, Allison. Okay, so we will be in touch afterwards to get shipping information for your iPad. Congratulations. Send us lots of pictures of you using Mees in the kitchen with all of your cooks. Any other questions before we close out this afternoon? Again, there will be a recording that will be sent to you. You can always find our webinars on getmees.com/webinars. Questions? Good. All right. Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody. We appreciate
Thanks,
your time.
everyone. Hope you found it helpful. Take care.
Thanks. Bye-bye.